Live on Facebook. I can see you, but I can't see me.
You can see me, but you can't see you. I'm going to.
Live on Facebook. There I am. I see you, but I can't see me.
The United States is a settler state. This is when immigrants enter into the territory and make it their own, compared to immigrants who assimilate into their new home's laws and customs. This situation is not unique to the United States. The same dynamic is found in Israeli settlers displacing Palestinians, the Spanish conquest of indigenous lands in Guatemala, and the forced assimilation of the Uyghurs in China. In all of these cases, the settler state status has led to aggressive and malicious attempts to eliminate or forcefully assimilate the indigenous population. Today in the United States, the settler state dynamic continues to manifest itself by pushing out unwanted populations through the militarization of borders and the criminalization of migration. These tactics correlate with the increasing wealth gap and will only be further exacerbated by climate change. The massive influx in funding is what allows the current militarization. Prisons are being converted into large-scale detention centers that are trapping migrants en masse, with more than 50,000 people held in ICE facilities, 20,000 held in Customs and Border Protection facilities, and more than 11,000 children in the custody of the Department of Health and Human Services, according to the Atlantic. This imprisonment of individuals and families at the border has also criminalized the action of migration. Asylum laws state that migrants escaping conflict should qualify as refugees and receive a protection status upon arrival. But this is not the reality. Attempting to migrate to the U.S. means nearly guaranteed imprisonment in a detention facility with limited freedom and poor access to healthcare, education, and proper conditions for children. As military forces at the borders control unwanted populations, police officers around the country are on a similar track with their control over populations in poverty. The book Policing the Planet, Why the Policing Crisis Led to Black Lives Matter, explains that as police take on zero-tolerance crime policies, they can drive out unwanted populations from a community. With zero-tolerance policing, officers use stop and search, a key tactic of zero-tolerance policing that enables them to target impoverished and minority populations. The world's environmental status will only increase migration and the othering of populations. Global climate change is promoting migration as people become climate refugees and flee areas plagued by flooding, agricultural insecurity, drought, extreme weather patterns, and unpredictable crop markets. Climate-related migration is worldwide, affecting the United States and Israel as settler states, as well as sending migrants out of Central America. Still, it creates an especially unjust dynamic in the United States, where they will likely continue to turn away migrants who are fleeing the impact of a crisis that the U.S. is largely to blame for. The concept of a settler state and the mentality and actions that result from it have always been and will continue to be dangerous and discriminatory. Hopefully, as movements such as Black Lives Matter grow in strength and support, this dynamic will shift. HSP supports Indigenous peoples to live on their land, in their community, and with their culture. We are committed to reconciling these political processes and peacefully reuniting people to move towards a better future together.
So, how are you doing tonight, Muna?
I'm doing good, Ben. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Struggling with technology. It's funny how these things work. Every single test run, it went smoothly, and tonight trying to get the two things connected. The thing that's supposed to pass through automatically for some reason did not happen. So you're out in Arizona. I understand you've been doing a lot of campaign stuff the last couple of months.
Yes. I've been working in election protection. I'm the organizing director for Election Protection Arizona. So we're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, really a group of coalitions that's come together to make sure that our elections run smoothly, particularly this time around. And we work with communities that typically have a hard time accessing their ballot, whether they be communities of color or folks with different abilities or disabilities, or tribal communities in Arizona, for example.
And what are you seeing as the biggest threats to the election this cycle?
Well, we've got a lot. I mean, the pandemic is a big, I wouldn't say a threat, but a big blanket over the entire election in terms of how smoothly can things really go. We know that our county recorder offices in Arizona are working very carefully to social distance. But in talking with our county recorders, they're concerned about threats of domestic terrorism. That was one of the first things that came to mind in our discussions with them. They've been preparing at every level. They're already worried, and having seen people try to be prevented from voting, the early voting in Virginia, folks in Arizona are concerned that we'll see similar things here. We always in Arizona see issues with our open carry laws and people carrying firearms at polling places. We're concerned that that will be more prevalent this year. We're also worried that there are going to be partisan challengers at the polls that are there to challenge people's ability to vote. Something we just started trying to do is prepare our volunteers for de-escalation. What we do as an organization is recruit volunteers to actually show up at the polls during early vote and election day to monitor the polls and assist people in voting.
And I understand COVID really interrupted a passion project of yours that I'm really excited about, and that we're in a very small way engaging and supporting you in this effort. I use the term horizontalism with the notion of creating relationships between different identity groups, and that we are starting to get out of issue silos or identity silos and to develop relationships or connections both domestically, locally, internationally, to create a unified reaction against the systems of oppression that's gone global. Do you want to take a second to share with us about the organizing work and what the vision of it is once COVID-19 allows for you to return to your primary passion?
Yes, so this past year, I founded a project called the Anam Project. Anam is the name of my Palestinian grandmother. The point of the project was to bring together people with a refugee and a migrant experience to talk about the commonalities they share. When I moved to Arizona, I mean, one only has to look at a map of the US and a map of Arizona to see it's a place that you can predict there's going to be conflict and strife based on borders and geography. And we've seen that increasingly at the US border. What a lot of people don't realize is that US border cuts exactly directly through the Tohono O'odham traditional lands and their reservations, both on the US-Mexican side of the border and the Mexican side of the border. And the very people building the wall on that US-Mexican border are the same people building the wall in Palestine and Israel, or have built that wall. And in coming to Arizona a few years ago, and in meeting Indigenous folks here, I really got treated almost like a time traveler as a Palestinian-American, as someone who understood what it is they're facing now, because what my people have faced in the past 1 to 2 decades as this wall has been constructed.
Yeah, it's a fascinating experience to travel into different geographical regions and seeing historical processes being played out. Frequently working in Guatemala or in Ecuador, you can see things, dynamics and phenomena that happen in the Southwest of the United States at a particular point of economic and social political development. And to watch these dynamics unfolding is very distressing. And I believe as we see climate change, I mean, one thing is with Black Lives Matter and lots of issues around policing and the militarization of borders, I think we can detect on a macroeconomic level and the policies that are paralleling the economics, the social political relations relevant to the economic relations, as we've seen a concentration of wealth and the neoliberal agenda, which is very much about privatization, individualism. We're seeing as the increase in wealth disparities, or the increase in the wealth inequality, We see an increase in funding for prisons and policing, and we see the policing policies like zero tolerance policies that have the impact of displacing minority populations during the regentification process.
Yeah.
And currently, all we have to do is go across the map to look at China and the Uyghurs, to look at Greece and England with immigrants, French officials saying that we should turn away boats on the Mediterranean. We can see with an increase in climate change and climate migration, the types of policies that are being implemented globally towards these militarizations of frontiers and policing of poverty. So I was hoping you could share with us your observations as a Palestinian-American looking at what's going on the Arizona border. And hopefully it will not be prognosticating the future. Hopefully we will be inspiring people to be engaged in preventing that future.
Hopefully. Would you like me to go ahead and try to share the PowerPoint presentation I've got?
Let's try this technology.
Let's try it. Let's see if it works for us today. Give me one moment here. Okay. Is it working? I think it's working.
It's loading.
Oh. Slowly loading. The wonders of technology.
You're getting the same message I had.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's just for a couple of the videos in here that we don't need to worry about. And I'm going to go through the slides in this presentation relatively quickly as we talk. But as we say here in Arizona, from the borderlines to Palestine, occupation is a crime. We refer to Southern Arizona as the borderlands for various reasons, and think of both of these areas as borderland areas. So I work with the Arizona Palestine Solidarity Alliance in Phoenix and in Tucson as well. We have 2 chapters, and our sister organization is No More Deaths, or No Más Muertes. And these groups, and No More Deaths is the group that famously leaves bottles of water in the desert for migrants as they cross over and up into the, North America. And there have been a few court cases about that people may recognize in the news. So we start our presentation today with 2 images, both bleak, both of big, intimidating walls, one of which is in Palestine and Israel, and one of which is in the U.S. and Mexico, cutting right through that Tohono O'odham territory. And you can immediately see the big similarities here. So today I'm going to be going through what it looks like in Palestine to be occupied, and then what the